Hey folks, this week Jeff joins me and we talk with Max Andersen about JBang. It's a little utility to make Java easier to use and run it as a scripting language if you really want to. It's a lot of fun, you don't want to miss it, so stay tuned. This is FLOSS Weekly, episode 801, recorded Wednesday, September 17th. JBang. It's not your parents' Java anymore. It's time for FLOSS Weekly. That's the show about free, libre, and open source software. I'm your host, Jonathan Bennett, and today it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be Java, which, that's okay. We mostly like Java here. It is not just me, of course. I have Mr. Jeff Massey, the one, the only, the other Mr. Linux, here with us to talk about JBang, which is an interesting project all about, from what I can tell, it's using Java as a system scripting language, which is sort of interesting. What do you know about this, Jeff?
Not a lot. When you first got a hold of me, I thought for a moment you were talking about JavaScript.
Well, it sort of is. It's Java space script.
Yes, not one word. So that's where I was a little confused at first. So I'm not a real. I don't have a lot of experience in Java, so very, very, very little. But I'm interested to hear about this and kind of the direction they're taking it.
Yeah. Now we talked before the show. It's like, well, couldn't you just do this with like an alias to the Java binary? And so, JBang would just then be an alias to Java. And that's the show. Thanks for coming, everybody. We'll see you next week. Apparently, there's something a little more to it than that. It's a little more complicated. There's more wrinkles. There's more hair on that problem. So looking forward to learning.
Devil's always in the details.
Yeah, always. Looking forward to learning about that. Let's not take any more time to bring him on. We have Max Andersen is the guest today. I believe the creator of JBang. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, creator of JBang, right? You're the man.
Yes, I created it after being a year away on a sabbatical, not doing anything, not doing anything work related, so to speak.
Right.
I'm happy to be here and be in a place where everyone loves Java and wants more Java and all that kind of thing.
So Java was I've told this on the show before, but Java was one of my early programming languages, and so some of the difficulties in learning how to program and what do you mean a pointer error and why I didn't even think Java had pointers. Why is the log telling me about? So some of that I have this sort of deep-seated annoyance with Java because I was programming it when I didn't know what I was doing.
Yes, and I see that repeatedly again. Most people have learned or touched Java, but they mainly have touched it at a time either in their career where they were not that was not a good. It was not a good learning language in the early days. But it got super popular because it could run anywhere. Right? Mm-hmm. You could run both on Linux and Windows and eventually Mac and that kind of thing.
And phones for a while there were DVD players and everywhere. Yeah,
everywhere.
Yeah, it was whatever devices there. Right. So I worked in Java. I've done professional open source in Java for 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. My day started at Hibernate and persistence solution, that kind of thing. And then I started doing tooling, and then I had what's it called? 10 years, 15 years of work, and came back. Then when containers came around, Java had a problem because it's too heavy and
right.
And I was tasked on doing some other tooling in Golang and JavaScript, and I got to touch on that. But then I took a break for a year, and I promised myself I'm not going to touch any programming for at least 3 or 4 months. Mm-hmm. And on the first day, I break my ankle and have to be not moving for 90 days. I decided not to touch Java, but go into Python instead. Mm-hmm. I knew Python from 20 years, early days. And I had fun with that. And then when I came back to actually work on a product called Quarkers, which can make Java work on containers, I was realizing how complicated Java is like in the minds of people. But when you refresh yourself on what's actually happening in the last X number of years, you realize, hey, there's no reason why it should be hard to use Java. And I then, as a way to update my knowledge about Java, sat down and say, hey, let me try and make like there's this the product Quarkus was using in their release engineering release scripts. They're using KScript, which it's Kotlin scripted, and Kotlin is considered more lightweight language. But I was like, why are we requiring to install Kotlin on top of this Java when the script is just doing some file automation stuff, right? So I took the ideas KScript had and applied it to Java, and that's where the scripting part comes from in JBang. And then I realized, hey, I want to have the same experience. I want to be able to, because the reason why I like Java is all the tooling around it, like the debuggers, the IDE, the content assist, the refactoring. But the problem was that when you try and do that in a scripting way with JBang, all that tooling falls apart. And then it becomes at the equal terms as Python and Ruby or Node or whatever. And then Java doesn't hold up. Like then those languages are nicer. But I was like, no, like we have a massive, like Java has a massive ecosystem. Like the whole Maven Central auto artifact you can download and use and do whatever you want. And I just said, hey, let's do this. And then the thing was in Java, I forgot, like 10 or 11, they added support for running a Java file without compiling it. But the problem was that and you could even use it as a script, like have a what's it called, JBang in the top, like what pound / dash run something. But any IDE you do that in will then see that as a syntax error because that command is not part of the Java ecosystem. So no IDE could work. And I was like, oh no, we need to find a way. So that's when I realized there was a trick in Go. I think I saw it first, that if you add 2 forward slashes, Bash and C shell and a few other shells, not fish shell, will treat that as a shell command. So you can then run it and pipe in the file. And Java will just treat it as a command. A comment. And that means you can run any Java file and it'll work in the IDE. The content system works. And I was like, hey, great, let me do that with Java 8, because at the time I was using Java 8, but you couldn't. So anyway, fast forward, I made it so there's a JBang command that you can call that can run a Java source file and compile it and then run it. And the advantage over the default Java is, A, it will cast the result, so therefore it doesn't have to do compile, it's already there. And only do the compile if the file changes. And then the one that's the kicker is it can get dependencies that is just in the file. So at the top of the file, you can add like / steps and then the coordinate for the artifact. So if and that's, once you have that, suddenly you can do things. And it works in IDE. Like in the early days, I was generating files for the IDE, but now a few days later, we have support in Eclipse, IntelliJ, and VS Code, especially VS Code. So now my favorite text editor is VS Code with a JBang plugin in it, because I can just be writing in my own language. And then on top of that, we started going low. Because that's the other big thing is, you need to start writing code without having to download an IDE, etc. But you need to get Java. But which Java version are you going to run? So then I added to JBang that it could download, or Taco, who I'm doing it with, added support for downloading the version of Java you're there. So now we had a full setup where you install JBang, which is a one-liner install, and then you just create a Java file, and you can add dependencies, and you can build it, and there's even a JBang edit that will actually, it will use your own IDE or download one for you, and it's configured. And once we had all those things in place, we suddenly had an ecosystem, so a whole setup that anyone can run on any of the 3 major platforms out there. And then suddenly I realized, hey, any student, any experiment I want to do, I can do in seconds compared to, hours of setup as it was before.
It sounds like you're technically making polyglot files here that are interpreted one way by Bash and interpreted another way by the IDE and by Java itself.
That is true. And the fun part, it's also a poly OS thing, because the first slash is Bash recognizing, hey, this is a Bash command in the start. The second slash is the Java comment, so it works. But the fun thing is that works on Linux and Mac. But if you do it on Windows, it gets interpreted as, I forgot what it is, but it's a UNC path. So it fails. But if you have a third one, everything's fine. It works in all 3. So it's not a feat.
Great.
It's a bug in all 3 that makes it work. But mind you don't need that line. That is literally just for the feature of being able to do, run the Java file directly.
To be able to do a / of it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Run the thing. That's the yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, and I think you kind of touched on this, but why did you choose Java? Was it strictly just because of the infrastructure, the existing infrastructure, versus not going, hey, maybe I want to try to work on, Python or Rust or some other language,
Yeah.
But so that was the thing. It's like my professional work life has been in the Java world, right? And I am proficient in the others, but I was before I did my sabbatical, I was like, why doesn't people do that? Why don't they just use Java more? Like, it's so easy to use, right? But I realized that my 15 years of working, I got immune to, you have to find a version of the JDK to download. You have to find IDE to download. You have to find XYZ, learn a Maven tool or Gradle tool. And I hadn't realized, it was just everyone in my bubble knew that. It's and people found, what's that called? Like when you're a group of people who've gone through the same pain, and now you're all kind of good.
Yeah.
And you don't see all the problems, right?
Right.
And you feel privileged that you got here, and then go hey, why is this student that never used program before surprised to this? And so one of the things you can do with JBang, so the main thing is I like Java. It's the language I like to do. I also like Python. I like JavaScript. I'm not a fan of, but there's a lot of languages I like. But the whole ecosystem of Java, the whole tooling, the compile, there's a lot of stuff we can do that none of the others can do. But so that's why I was like, when I went on sabbatical, I was like, how hard can this be? Why is it so hard when I came back? Because then I have forgotten all these things, and I was just realizing how many steps I have to do. So coincidentally, also at the time, my son was about 7 or 8, 6, 7. So he got into Minecraft at that time, and Mindstorms, the Lego stuff. And those two actually uses Java in a setup. And I was like, let me go and show programming with Java to my kid. And I heard about all these kids and teenagers using writing plugins for Java. And I thought, then it can't be hard. Then there must be a guide in Minecraft land that is simple to get started. And I was surprised that people are even doing Minecraft plugins, because any product I found there had 5 or 6 pages of setting up Java to get started. And I realized, okay, so they're going through all this pain just because, hey, all of their friends are liking Minecraft. So therefore, that's why they get there. But I was just like, why? And then I realized with the JBang stuff I had, I could literally write. I made it trivial to write Minecraft plugins in JBang.
Interesting.
Because now it's just a single file, and you just have a dependency on the Minecraft, whatever Minecraft plugin system you use, and off you go. Stuff like, again, people don't. Well, you don't know because you're not Java heads, so what do you call them? But one of the things I always find insane, like when you do debug a Java project, right? It is literally like 80 characters you have to type in of Java does agent connect server equals yes to whatever port. And I was like, why? It's the same. It was fine when we 20 years ago added this feature. We didn't know how it should want to look like, but it just stayed around. And in JBang, that is dash debug, and it behind the scenes just do that connection string. And I just chipped along, and anything I could find that was like this unnecessary complexity that has organically grown, I just kind of chipped away. And because I just use the standard Java tooling, it works on anything. Like so, it runs on Java 8 and onwards. So I could even make it work on Java 6 and older. No one ever asked for it, so I didn't want to incur the pain, but technically it could.
Yeah.
So Java was just because that's the thing I like. I might be weird, but there's also a whole enterprise out there that uses Java, and I was tired of hearing this. Oh, when you're using IoT, you have to use Rust or Python, or if you do front end something. You have to use JavaScript. Oh, and because everyone now do use JavaScript front end, we have to use JavaScript at the back end too. I have nothing against it, but it's just this, like, hey, like Java can actually do these things too. So don't fall in. I have the same thing with the whole AI movement that everyone thinks, oh, to use AI you have to use Python, and I'm like, hey, so this is my gimmick. You can actually run JBang from Python now. So if you have a Jupyter notebook somewhere, Jupyter notebook environment, you can do pip install JBang, and it will actually, you don't have to do anything. It will set up Java in that environment, and now you can use Java from any of those free services like Cloud Notebooks and others, and get access dependencies. And people don't believe me when I say so, but it is actually doable. So now I claim that Java is the most portable environment anywhere. And with JBang, it's the easiest thing to set up. Because I don't know if you actually tried. Have you tried to actually set up a Python environment on a Windows machine?
No. Oh
no.
That is
on Linux,
horrible, right? Yeah, because this is the thing. Like just like the Java guys are like in a mindset, hey, you just do these 7 steps and you're fine. Python and Node.js is default installed on Mac and Linux, but there's a whole ecosystem of Windows, which is, I'm sad to say, but it's the most installed desktop operating system out there.
Yeah.
Where running Python is not easy. Fun enough, JBang is one line, and you have a full Java environment available to you, and it works.
That's actually really cool.
I did think it was funny that when you said Java was really easy, because I'm like, I don't know if I've heard anybody utter that phrase before. I've always heard there's a learning curve, but so I totally get who you're surrounded by and what you're in, and So,
but
officially, so I can make sure I have this down. What versions of Java are supported? I know you said you weren't going backwards from.
So JBang itself is compiled with Java 8, so it can run on any Java 8 VM and upwards, right?
Okay.
So because what JBang does is it's the simplest product I ever made. It literally is just a little it's a small Java app, and it just takes input and figures out, oh, is this a Java file? I need compile it first, and then I create a Java C command line, and then I build the classes, and then I jar it up and have a jar, and then I run the jar. And if it's a jar file, I just run the jar. And if it's a Maven coordinate, I go fetch the Maven dependency. If it's a Kotlin file, I run the Kotlin compiler. If it's Groovy, I do the Groovy compiler. And in that sense, JBang actually goes beyond just Java, but any JVM-based language is in theory possible to in that way run. And because the OpenADK team generally are good at having backwards compatible command lines or forward compatible ones, it has been reliably working on any version that's come out in the last 4 years. And the cool thing is, JBang knows which version of Java the user is asking for. So therefore, if for some reason, let's say Java 25 is going to break something, I can adjust the generation of the command line stuff, and then it'll just kind of work. So that's the way that this magically works.
Oh, that makes it nice then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got my Java version 8 plus, whatever. Now to make this a little easier, these complexity reductions that you talk about, have they made their way upstream? I mean, are you making life easier for me?
I'm actually I work in Red Hat, and my main job is actually to work with some of the compiler guys and OpenADK team and other things. And I've been pointing them to some of this stuff, but the OpenADK team is a very like it's a really complicated machinery, but it's like really efficient. Like it's a really it's engineered really well. But they also use everywhere. Like so, it's kind of like I think you had an episode about the core. Was it the core lips, the core tool utils, about how backwards compatible they think has to be. OpenADK is in that ballpark, but they also want to tweak things up. But they're very conservative. Yeah. Right. So even if I propose something now, it's going to take literally years before it's there. So I haven't done a lot of it, but one thing I'm not sure if it was coincidentally or not, but a year after I made the big splash with JBang and created it and showed, hey, you can run JBang, and another thing, I can also run JShell, right? So JShell is a shell, is like this tool in Java where you just run, it's like what's called Rebel, like one line at a time. I can run those scripts too, and I showed that hey, the only thing you need to have being run is just a single file, and you didn't even have to have a class in around like the whole like public class static void main thing. You don't have to do. And then a year or two after, the JDK team has now come out with that. I think it's Java 22. There's a preview support for what I call naked main. So that's the simplest Java thing you can do today now is void main system.println. There's no args, there's no class, there's no imports. They actually, that's the one thing that it's a thing that they started to put in, and some of the flags I've been doing, like the debug one, I've proposed, at least to the internal Red Hat team. And I'm actually meeting them this week where I'm now here in Zurich. And I'm going to talk to them. So, but again, this is so hard to do because people are so, like, one thing is that they are used to it, but also just there's so many infrastructure that's like, if you start... I have the advantage that this is not in Java, so therefore I can change things a bit. But I at least find pride in. I think I might have accelerated some of those decisions to simplify Java. So I'm trying, but it's going to take a long time.
When you measure your like install base in the billions with a B, you want to be very careful about making changes that could break things.
Yes. Right.
So you mentioned you mentioned naked mains. I'm curious, with JBang, do you support implied mains, or when I go to write a JBang script, do I still have to define a main?
Yes, you do, and then I'll explain what, but no, you don't. So one of the key things I wanted was to make sure that the IDEs keep working, right? So I could make JBang go look in the sources and see, oh, this is just a naked main. Let me behind the scenes generate a wrapper around it, and behind the scenes do something. But if I do that, that Java file would not work in any IDE because none of the IDEs currently supports that notion. Right? So I did not do that. But what I did do is the JShell support. So JShell is this tool that's been in Java since Java 9, I think, where you can literally just run any kind of Java, like it's a line-based execution. But the weird, well, I'm not saying weird, but a limitation of JShell is JShell are not able to take arguments. It doesn't handle dependencies. And that's because JShell was built for tinkering. Like it was like, hey, let me play around with something, not for use as a main execution engine. But I realized, hey, with JBang, I have a way to run these, so they are still JShell scripts. But I actually handle the command line arguments and parse things in, and then, so yes, you can do mainless with JBang back to 9, it is. But it comes with the price that JShell comes with, which is it's a slower execution. It's not as fast as everything else. So the answer is yes and no.
Okay. So this ties into something else I was going to ask about. Are you doing compiling down to bytecode? Like with Python, oftentimes when you run a script, you'll end up with a .pyc file hanging around, and it does that to speed up compilation. So it sounds like sometimes you compile down to bytecode, and sometimes you don't.
No, as what's it called? Conceptually, it's the same thing I do. Right, so Python has these PyC files that says, "Hey, this is a compile time," and if the file, the timestamp matches the file, we will use that the PyC, and I do similar thing here. There's a magical folder in your home directory called .jbang where I have a cache, and in there's traces of what you've been doing.
Right.
And does that, and that's the thing. So this is the one. But people have a hard time grogging that it's that easy. But for example, the naked main is available in Java 22, and people go like, okay, I can't use that. That takes too long, because if you use the normal install, it will be complicated. But with JBang, it's just JBang -- Java 22. And all this stuff will just be, I'll download the JDK and it'll just run for you. And the same thing is what I do with the compile, the bytecode stuff. I will generate bytecode, compile classes. But I'm using the standard Java C tools, right? So there's nothing, JBang doesn't do anything that Java itself can't do, right? I'm very confident that it will be portable for a very long time. As long as the OpenJDK team stays portable, JBang will too.
What about, we talked a little bit about Java versions. What happens if somebody says, here's my JBang script, and it calls for Java 11, and Java 11 is not installed anywhere on the system? Do you deal with that, or do we just fail?
Yeah. No. Well. Yeah. So the Well, if you run when you install JBang, there's no Java needed. You can use any package manager and stuff. So basic JBang has nothing. It doesn't even have Java, right? So just have a jar, but it also has a script, so a bash script or a PowerShell script if it's Windows, and that thing will go look for Java. And it has a default thing going like, hey, I'll use the default JDK that is on your system in your path to run JBang. But if that's not there, we will go download. I think it's Java 17 now. There's an API in the Java ecosystem that's hosted by a product called Fujie. And Fujie has an API to go get all these different variants of JDKs for different platforms. So we recognize the system, the architecture, the platform, the OS. We get it and download, install it, and then that means now we have the Java to run JBang. But if your script then needs to say, hey, I'm using Java 21. So you can do that with / Java 21 in the file, or 21 plus to say 21 or higher. We then go and look, is the current Java at Java 21? Nope. Okay. Go fetch. We install it in .jbang cache, and we will set up for you. So yeah, that thing is just magic in JBang land. Like, it just works.
Yeah. So something else that might be magic that I want to know about is again, you've mentioned this briefly, but dependency handling. How difficult is it? Because Java's all about dependencies. Like there's like a million libraries out there. That's like one of the super powerful things about it. Is it? I wish I could do this in Java. There's probably a library that does it. How do you pull one of those in? Do you have to like include somewhere that like here's what it is on Maven and go grab it, or can you just like include the class and it'll automatically go look it up? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I had a prototype for the class thing, but it's too magical. Like it becomes like things fails. But so right now, so it might happen eventually. But right now, we use a / steps for dependencies, and it uses the convention. It's the same. If you use Gradle, they have Maven actually has a syntax for specifying group, artifact, version, classified as a whole language, and that's just the one that we support, right? And that makes it very compact, and that's what we do. And that's all there is to it, like / steps, and you can do it in the file. You can have a separate file. You could do it on command line, and you can combine them. So you can have let's say you have a script that does something that says, I need Java 21 plus. I'm using Hibernate for database access, but then when you run it, you need to get a driver like SQL, like MSQL or Postgres. So then you can go JBang -- steps, the Postgres driver, and then the script, and then these two get combined. And now when you run, you have access to the driver too. Right? So it's very composable in that sense too.
Yeah. Jeff, you want to ask that?
So you said you had a cache directory and everything, and and like I said, I'm not super on Java. So do I end up with a jar file that I write my script in JBang, it can run, it can work. Do I end up with a jar that I can then just say, oh, hey, Jonathan, I wrote this script, but I just send him the jar file and it runs on his machine? Or how does that work?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So this is now, yeah, exactly. So, so there is actually a jar file generated in the background. Originally, I thought that in early days it was just there because that was an easy way to actually not have 1,000 files, but just a jar. That's one jar that has the whole thing. But then this was actually the Mindstorm, the Lego Mindstorm use case I had for my kid. I needed a jar that I ran, I had to export it and ship it into the Raspberry Pi thing that was doing the mine thing, the Lego stuff. So I had to export it. So there's a JBang export that will generate the jar that the result, but it will also depending on how there's both, you can make the jar and then copy in next to it all the dependencies, and then the jar has references, so you can just run it. So it's like a multi-file thing on disk. Or we also have a export fat jar, which then takes all the dependencies and just squats into one jar, and you can ship that over and run it somewhere. And there's a bunch of other ways you can like export a container, export other stuff. But yeah, you can take those scripts and export as a jar and just give it to someone and hope they have Java, or you can tell them to install JBang, because JBang doesn't only work for scripts, it will also work for jars. And then JBang will go get the right Java version and run that jar for you. So I'm not sure if I explained that well enough, right? Because then, and this is the thing where I was having fun some weird night. I go like, wait, I can now run the jar locally I can have Java sources, create a jar, I can export the jar, and I go like, wait, why don't I just allow you to run any JavaScript, Java source file or jar that is locatable by HTTPS, HTTP request. So that opened up for that you can go and say, not just JBang a file, but JBang a URL, right? And it applies the same logic that it does locally. It's a .java file. Okay, I download the file, compile it to a jar, analyze dependencies, and all this there. It's a jar file. I run it. I download and run it. It's a Maven dependency. I fetch the dependency. And we actually made it even further. So now we have a shorthand for any GitHub repository or a GIST, GIST service for grabbing stuff. You can do JBang a GIST URL, and we will go and look for Java files in that GIST and compile it for you. So you have something running somewhere. You can it's now trivially easy to distribute that to anyone, anywhere on the planet, as long as JBang is on the system. So,
yeah,
well, that's awesome, because that would be good for, say I write something, then I need to give it to my mom who's not a computer person. I can just, okay, install this, and then do this, and then
yes,
everything's automatically taken care of.
What does the process look like of installing JBang itself? Is there just like is there some little tiny script that you can curl and run that bootstraps everything? Or you mentioned it's available in pip. What are the options for getting JBang on a machine?
How much time do you have? Because I counted it just before here. I think I have about 20. You had like 90 or 20 different ways you can install JBang. So there is the traditional, like in Linux land, you can curl download thing, right? Mm-hmm. But you can also, there's a Fedora package, there's a Red Hat RHEL package, there's a CentOS package, there is ASD, what's called ASDF, the installer, there's a Nix package, there's a Docker image, there's a JavaScript module, there's a Python module, there's a GitHub action. There is on Windows. There is, if you know, there's a NuGet and a Choco installer, a Scoop installer, and on Brew there is. On Mac there's Brew. So I literally any reasonable packaging system that either I was able to make work or someone in the community has done, we have available to get it. So basically, there's no excuse to not install JBang. In that sense.
And we talk about this on the Untitled Linux Show sometimes, but I did look, and there's also a snap that's available for Ubuntu.
Oh yes, sorry, yes.
we like to tease back and forth sometimes about that.
Yeah. Some of us are not excited about the snaps.
Yeah, I know. And the snaps, and there's the one that there's in Fedora land. I forgot the name now, but the same concept of these isolated ones, which was actually a really big challenge. Yeah, Flatpak, yes, right. But it's a very big challenge because I need, like, JBang needs a Java to run, right? But if I'm not allowed to run the Java that's on your system, it's a very limited use. And one of the things Flatpak does is its default is sandbox, so you can't do that. We found a way, so you can use it as a Flatpak. It can run, but you have to run with like some like escalated privileges because JBang is calling back to your system to use the Java you have available on your system. So, but yeah, there's all the ways you can think of. If one is missing, let me know.
Mashed potato from our chat room says, was compile it from source on that list?
Compile. Yeah, well, so the product is fairly easy to compile. But that's you can, but it's not a way I say, hey, this is how you download. It's one of the things I learned from early on is any successful like utility open source product. First, you have to have working software, and two, you have to have available to release.
Yeah.
Sorry, available to run. And that's why in the beginning I was like, because I've been doing tooling for 20 years, and I had to fight people for, hey, you know what? Great, it runs on Linux and Mac, but majority of enterprise customers runs on Windows. And every Linux guy and every Mac guy hates me for it. It's like, I don't want to deal with it. No, I know. But that's one thing is what you as a privileged guy who have access to only run Linux, you're not the developer who runs in a bank somewhere and told to run in this Windows Citrix hosted somewhere. It won't run on this stuff, right? So I spent, that was what, before I released anything, I want to make sure it ran on all three platforms, and it worked on every release, and I could release that very easily. And that's, so early on, I think we had 10 or 12 different ways of packaging and installing it, which was really, really hard to do because there was no other Java product that had done these very different ways of setting up installers. And that actually, you had Andres Almaria on about JReleaser a month back or so. And JReleaser actually, part of like the way JReleaser got created was I talked to Andres about some of this stuff, and he said, hey, I'm doing a Go thing, and Go Releaser has this thing. Why don't we have this for Java? And I said, well, if you make it, I have all the scripts. I have already done all the work on how you make a CLI in Java that can run on or be installed by these. So he took that and improved on JReleaser to the point that now JBang is using JReleaser instead of the scripts I created like 5 years ago. So it's all connected.
Yeah. It's kind of a challenge these days, actually, to get a Java runtime environment on Windows, isn't it? Didn't like Oracle make some licensing changes to where you got to have some sort of agreement with them to be able to download it?
Oh yeah, so this is another part. Like, well, this is fun. Like, it has never been easier to get Java on any platform, because what Oracle did, or Sun, or like years back, was they open sourced it, and there's all these different teams that makes JDKs available. So yes, Oracle did change their license statements, and I'm not a lawyer, so don't. But basically, it says you can use it for free, but after a year, if you stay on this version, you have to pay Oracle, or you upgrade to the latest. So if you stay on the latest, you're fine with Oracle's. But of course, as a Red Hat or anyone else, so I'll just say, hey, use any of the other ones, especially Eclipse Adoption, which is making a build of OpenJDK available to you. And there's Amazon and Microsoft and others has JDKs that are available without any of those license restrictions on them.
Makes sense.
And And then there's this Fuji, which is a service that literally gives me an API. Like I in JBang, I generate a URL that says this OS, this platform, this combination, and it will orchestrate. It'll go, oh, you need you want adoption build for Windows on this architecture. I'll go get that at the actual vendor, right? So there's one place that you can look up and get any kind of JDK for on any platform now. So it is trivially easy.
Yeah.
But yes, Oracle, of course, says, hey, install the Oracle one, because if you get that's the one you use, then you will want to get support from Oracle and pay for that.
Yeah.
Does
JBang?
That's no.
Yeah. Does JBang support actually installing? So it sounds like you go with OpenJDK by default. Do you support actually installing the one from Oracle, and does that ever matter?
Oh yeah. So the default I use is what's called Eclipse Adoption. So this is maybe you heard the thing called Adopt OpenJDK some years back. There was like an alternative to get Oracle to realize, hey, make the binaries more freely available. Mm-hmm. So I use that because I then are sure that no user that ever uses JBang will end up with a licensed what's called
licensing hell.
I don't want
essentially.
Yeah, right. But so I don't. And also I wanted to make sure that any default use of JBang will always get as close an experience as you have. Like, so for example, Jeff said, hey, I wrote my script on my Linux, I'm sending it to my mom mm-hmm. or some student. Just run a JBang. So JBang will by default download, if you don't have the default system Java, you'll go download the adoption one. But because we use this Fuji behind the scenes that can get any of them, there is actually a flag. It currently is not exposed in JBang because I haven't figured out a good way of doing it. Mm-hmm. But there is an environment where you can say, hey, the JDK vendor should be Oracle or mm-hmm. Amazon or Red Hat. And then we will actually go get that one. And that includes then the Oracle ones, etc. Where it's actually has a use case is when you use early access builds. Mm-hmm. So when there's a new version of something, the OpenJDK community project will have binaries before the orders have them, like a few days before. Mm-hmm. Right? And then it's nice to do. Or if for some reason Oracle has some features that are specific to their JDK, if you want to utilize those, you will want to use the Oracle. But that's it's a niche case, so it's not a thing that there's flags and things you can do it, and I use it all the time for testing on weird combinations.
Yeah.
But yes, it supports it. There's a way to do it.
Yeah, awesome.
So you talk a lot about supporting, all three platforms, looking at other open source projects, which ones are successful, how they do it. So what has been the challenge of getting people to use JBang, getting users to come in, into the ecosystem?
So that was the one that surprised me the most, because for me, when I built JBang, it was just, hey, I want to replace this case script, and let's just do it. And then suddenly I realized, oh shit, I can do all these things that we just talked about. And then I go out and showed it to my team. These are people that have been doing Java for years, and I thought they'll immediately be like, this looks awesome, let's go. And they're like, no, why? This is not using Maven. This is not using Gradle. This doesn't work in the IDE. Like, why? This is not Java. Like, why should I use this? And I go, no, it is Java. It's just a little script that runs around. And I've heard so many times people are like, no, this is not what I'm used to, and therefore they just abandon the idea. And also, there's this Java is in an enterprise setting, so everything has to be enterprisey. So if stuff is easy, it's considered not enterprisey. Like, it's this weird thing, right? like I even heard um, someone was like, no, it's called JBang, it's not Java, so therefore it's not part of the Java ecosystem. And then I point out to them, and they say, well, no one will ever use that. And I point out to them, you do realize Maven nor Gradle is part of Java. That is a complete separate ecosystem from it. So it should be possible. Oh, that's just how it is. And then you go look at they say, oh, it should be as easy to do as you do in Go. Right. So for example, Go did a brilliant thing. They actually have all these tooling in, like, anything is built into Go. Like there's the Go formatter, there's the Go install, all that stuff is there. But that is all copied from like Python and Node.js. So if you look at Python, pip is not part of Python. Right? Pip is a separate thing that Python, the community, has adopted. Node.js and JavaScript, it was originally in a browser. Someone then took it and put it in Node.js, and Node.js then made this thing called NPM. So all the other ecosystems, which people are saying, hey, these are easy, has done what I'm doing it. But in the Java world, it's considered like against some religion or something. So that's my heresy. Yeah, that's my biggest issue. That I generally, when I go out and talk and present, it's like dividing three people. One is the ones who get it immediately and like, hey, I can do scripts and I can run them, I can install them, and that's good. And then there's a group that I think if they got it, they've just been so indoctrinated. They're like, no, this is alien. I will not touch it. And then there's the one in the middle who are like, they need to go touch it and see it before it connects. And that's been the challenge, and it keeps being a challenge. That people just can't believe that it's this easy. And like. The Taco is he's to blame or thanks for a lot of these installation stuff. Like when he proposed this thing about being able to app. So we did all the JBang run and run from UL. Like in early days, I can even run a tweet. Like so you can go. Nice. You have a tweet UL. I can go JBang Twitter blah blah, and I could run a tweet. Unfortunately, I can't do that anymore because Twitter has locked down. If you don't have JavaScript, you can't run anything that way. But Taco came up with this like, hey, why can't we do JBang app install? Like you can do npm install, pip install, go install. Why can't we do that for Java? So, and this is the thing, and this is, again, I'm saying it here, and I'm pretty sure no majority of those who are listening will not get it until they try it. But you can now, you can take a JBang script or a jar or a Maven artifact or anything and install. You can go JBang app install. Like the latest one is JLlama. JLlama is an inference engine for AI. It's a little tool. You just go JBang app install JLlama. And it's a different name, and then you have JLlama, and you just run JLlama directly. You don't see JBang, you don't see Java. It's just there as any CLI. And there's a bunch of these tools out there. Like there's a SQL line, there's different utilities that are written in Java, which originally you have to go like download the JDK, download the jar, put it in the path, blah blah. All that is just gone. You just go JBang app install, and you can do that for any Java. That product has been built with Maven or Gradle or whatever, and the only thing they use JBang for is just to wire up all that stuff. And again, if you're a Python guy, a Node.js Go guy, you've been doing that all day, all year for the last 10 years. And now you can do it for Java. But getting that word out and getting people to believe it is been the biggest challenge.
I remember what you taught when you said, it's got to be hard to be enterprise and all that. Because I remember back in the early days of the internet, if you didn't compile your own IP stack, you didn't deserve to be on the internet. It was just
Yes.
it has to be
Yeah.
hard, or you don't deserve to be here. But going into that, can I use it in enterprise? Is it is it stable enough? Is it ready to go?
So,
Can I
well,
have a
so
cheat code for
yeah,
enterprise?
yeah. Well, so the yes. So the thing is, and this is related to what I said before. Like it literally is. You don't have to do the scripting part of JBang. JBang scripting was just where it started, but you can use any kind of jar. So if you have a Spring project or a Micronaut or Quarkus or anything else, you can just use JBang to run it, set it up. And one enterprise area I see, and this is where we actually use it on the project I have myself, is all the CI scripts. Like it's so popular with doing all this DevOps stuff, and the fact that our Java developers can just use Java to script things that they do. So that's one enterprise. But the other product that my main job is actually to work on a product called Quarkus. That's actually the T-shirt I have on here.
Nice.
It's this thing where we it's an enterprise framework stack that makes Java fun again, so to speak, and can run very effectively. And that one actually, the way Quarkus does that is by doing build time, like doing stuff at build time, and that normally requires a full build tool. But if you combine that with Quarkus actually has support for JBang. So if you take a JBang script and add a Quarkus dependency, it will actually not just be fetching dependencies, but JBang has support for extensions. So Quarkus actually gets invoked to go, hey, I compile these source files. Now go your Quarkus thing. And then that output is actually an enterprise app, right? And that can then use all the stuff Quarkus has, like native compilation, running container, any camel, CXF, all that enterprise stuff is available to you. But I do want to put an asterisk on it. I'm not telling you to drop all your Gradle and Maven projects, because there's stuff that JBang doesn't do that these need to do. There's the complexities that JBang never will cover. But definitely, you can use JBang to write microservices and get it up and running. We do it for we have a GitHub bot and some applications. They are actually either a Quarkus app then run by JBang because it can get all the Javas, or it's a script that sets up a few things and just runs. So yes, it is enterprise ready, but it has a certain use case, right? So in that way, it is there. Right?
Very cool. So I've got to ask, what's coming down the pike? Is there something coming for JBang that you're excited about?
Well, so what I've been doing mainly is I go out and I try and find all these utilities, because there's a bunch of people who wrote awesome things that never got into hand of people because it was hard to run these things. So I mainly go out and submit small patches. Hey, if you ran this JBang, we have this notion of a JBang catalog, which sets up the command line and all that kind of thing, and make it runnable. So that's what I've been doing. But the main when I then do that, then I might find a thing that they do that I hadn't thought about, and then we do a release. And I'm on release, I think like 0.119 is the one, and I think I've done like 250 releases in four years now. So right now it's very incrementally, but I'm trying to get to that 1.0. But that 1.0, there are some enterprise features around how you manage dependencies that I don't capture. But otherwise, I'll say we are very feature complete in being able to do the main mission of what JBang is. So for me, the big thing now is actually to get people aware that this exists and try it out and not try and be scared of it. So it's more of a soft features than the hard features in that sense. Yeah.
Trying to get to 1.0, do you feel like Sisyphus rolling the rock up for all of eternity? Is it a Sisyphean effort?
Yes. Well, it's just the thing is, the problem is I've made come back to it's so easy to do releases, and it's been stable, and we actually try, and I think we have one or two glitches where we did a mistake. But it's actually, you can still use the old ones just fine. But one of the things I want to do before the 1.0 will break some users, and that's the rolling. I'm like one day I'll do it this way, and then I don't know. So yes, I do feel like that. But the cool thing I do is this part of the way we do the installation, whether it's the Maven plugin or Gradle any of the way you install like curl and stuff is going through JBang dev a URL, so I can actually see when people are running a JBang installation script. So no, I can't see who you are, but I can just see someone somewhere did fetch this little script to go get the latest version information. And I can see the growth is there. A lot of people in Azure and GitHub Jackson is using it. But I'm still missing the uptake in all those Java utilities out there to have it at any Java stuff available as easy as you can for Python and JavaScript.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, we're getting close to wrap, and here in just a minute, I'm going to ask if there's anything we didn't ask that we should have. While you think about that, I'm going to ask a different question, and that is, what is something that your users have done that really has surprised you? Is there any oddball use cases that are particularly interesting?
Well, so the latest one, it's not all about with JBang, but it's just this thing of the JLama thing. So again, everyone thinks AI has to be a Python, which is great and stuff. But JLama, Java has Vector 20. There's a vector support coming, so it can do efficient array copying and manipulation, which you need to do an inference engine. So there's a guy, Jake. I just know him as Jake online. Has written a Java implementation that's called JLama. And he had an installation setup that was very complicated, and I just pointed him, hey, if you do a JBang, and he just did that to this week. So now you can actually, with JBang, again, you can start from scratch on your machine and just install JBang and go JBang, JLama, download this one of those models and run it. And it will be CPU, GPU optimized and that kind of thing. On any platform where that exists. So that's my recently interesting setup. Another one, and that's gonna be tricky to explain without showing it, but Java has a notion of agents. So you can attach any Java app, you can attach an agent that gets notified by anything gets loaded, and then it can manipulate the classes. And you can do evil things or good things. You can monitor and that kind of thing. And again, if you use the normal Java toolchain, that's a lot of arguments, a lot of setup, and you have to download files and that kind of thing. So we have a project in Red Hat called Byteman, which is an agent that can go in and you can say, hey, if I hit a method that has this signature the third time, throw an exception or log a statement. Right? So you can do all kinds of things. But you have to do all these steps. And then I realized in JBang, we have all the pieces to not just go get dependencies, but all of the app, but also the dependency of the agent. And also any configuration that the agent needs, I can go get from a URL. So again, with JBang, you can actually set up any kind of agent usage on any kind of a Java app in a one-liner command. No complicated Gradle, Maven, all that kind of thing. And I find that super interesting, but I also think very people will actually appreciate it, because those who actually manage to do that without it is very, very few.
Right.
But the power is immense, and this is stuff that you can't, like in Python or Node.js. Is those kind of things just doesn't exist, or are even more obscure than we have here. There's
Yeah, interesting. All right, is there anything that we didn't ask about that you really wanted to let folks know about?
Well, so the main thing I have is, like, if you're listening to this and seeing it, do just try it out and spread the word. Like, try and use it, and if you have a Java utility somewhere, apply a little bit of JBang so it actually becomes available to anyone out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's my hope, that some of those people in the, hey, Java is this horrible complicated thing, but I know that this utility I actually would like to use if it was easy to use Java. That's where JBang can help. So yeah.
Yep. All right.
Try it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a couple of questions that I'm required to ask everybody. I think I already know the answers, but what is your favorite scripting language and text editor?
So the text editor. So I use every editor on the planet because I've done tooling it. But the one my day-to-day driver at the moment is VS Code, or some variant of that. The scripting language. Well, I would say Java space script. I've done a lot of scripting in my like Bash and Ruby and Perl and Python, but once I got it working for Java, I use it for everything. But it's technically not a scripting language, but JBang makes a scripting language, so yes, I'll say
it counts.
Java space script is my favorite scripting language. Yes.
There you go. All right. I think that's it. We have gone past the hour. We sure appreciate you being here, Max. Thanks for stopping by and telling us a bit about JBang and scripting with Java. Sounds like fun.
You do try it. It's not your parents' Java anymore. So
yeah, yeah. I'll have to look it up and give it a shot. All right. Jeff, what do you think? Have we convinced ourselves to go try some JavaScripting that is not JavaScript?
I'm kind of interested in this. It's I've seen a bunch of Java programming in the past, and I've messed with other languages, not really with Java, but kind of something to make it a little easier like that. I kind of interested in that. It piques my curiosity.
Yeah, I feel like it would be fun to at least like fiddle around with it enough to be able to say that you've done so.
Right.
I'm curious. I guess I wonder, are there things that you normally do in scripting that Java is not made for? And we ran out of time. This is one of the questions I wanted to ask. We ran out of time to do so. But I'm interested to dive into it and see, like in Bash scripting, you get to do things like call other Bash commands with backticks and then replace the output of that command into your script. And I guess Java has all of that built in because it's more of a full-featured programming language, so it doesn't even need all those tricks. But I don't know, it's interesting. It'll be fun to play with. I definitely need to go grab it and check it out.
Yeah, in possibly a snap format.
Maybe. I don't think I have any computers that'll run snaps, actually.
That's a ULS inside baseball there.
Yeah. All right. Jeff, thanks for being here. Do you have anything that you want to plug?
I don't. I just, I guess other than check us out on the Untitled Linux Show over on the twit.tv network, become a member of Club Twit, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. I do want to let folks know, first off, next week we're talking about EMBA with Michael Messner, and that is an embedded firmware analyzer. I came across this doing the security column on Pack-A-Day, which goes live on Friday morning, which you should check out. Came across it one week, and it's an open source project doing like embedded firmware analysis, looking for problems, trying to understand the way it works. And I got to looking at their code and thought it was really cool. And so we're going to have them on the show next week. It's going to be super duper interesting to talk about EMBA. Other things that I want to plug, of course, as Jeff said, we've got the Untitled Linux show over at twit.tv. Would love for everybody to go check that out. Show Twit some love. And we appreciate Hack-A-Day giving us a home for the show. And with that, we will see you next time on Floss Weekly.